I'm Madeline, and when I was 16, my parents left me at an airport on purpose. They called it a lesson. I called it the day I stopped needing them. 20 years later, they found me not for love, not for forgiveness, but for money. And when I said no, they tried to ruin everything I built. But they forgot one thing. I survived once. I can survive them again. I was 16, sitting in the back seat of our old Chevy Tahoe, staring out the window as the highway signs for Savannah rolled by. We were driving back to Charlotte after visiting family in Georgia, and I had my headphones in, trying to drown out my parents' constant bickering. My dad Ronald was gripping the steering wheel, jaw tight, as he argued with my mom Diana about gas prices or which road to take. It didn't matter. They always found something to fight about. My sister Rebecca sat in the front seat, quiet as always, pretending not to hear, playing the perfect daughter they wanted. The Georgia heat pressed against the glass as I shifted, pulling my knees closer to my chest. I felt invisible in that car, and honestly, it was easier that way. We pulled off at a small regional airport outside Savannah. I didn't think much of it at first, assuming Dad needed gas or Mom needed coffee. Instead, Dad parked by the curb and turned around, not even looking me in the eye. "Go grab your mother a bottle of water," he said. I blinked, pulling my headphones down. What Mom forced a tight smile that never reached her eyes. "And grab your dad a soda, honey." I sighed, digging through my backpack for the crumpled $5 bill I had left. "Fine." I stepped out, the thick Georgia air swallowing me as I crossed the parking lot toward the vending machines outside the terminal doors. I pressed the buttons, the old machine groaning, before spitting out a lukewarm soda and a bottle of water. Turning around, I expected to see the Tahoe still waiting by the curb, engine idling, my parents annoyed that I was taking too long. But the curb was empty. I froze, scanning the lot, shifting the drinks in my arms as I tried to spot the familiar dent on the back of our car. My eyes darted across every parked vehicle, but they were gone. I walked toward the curb, then back toward the terminal, my breath catching as panic started to rise in my chest. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I nearly dropped the drinks as I fumbled to pull it out. It was a text from Mom. "Let's see how you find your way home. Think of it as a lesson." My heart dropped, the screen blurring as tears stung my eyes. My fingers shook as I hit the call button for Mom. Voicemail. I tried again, this time calling Dad. Voicemail. I tried Rebecca, praying she would answer, that she would tell them to turn around and come back. Voicemail. I stood there clutching the warm soda and water, the airport announcements echoing around me as people moved past, wheeling luggage, hugging loved ones, getting on with their lives. I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath me, leaving me floating in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I walked toward a bench near the entrance, dropping the drinks beside me as I sank down, pulling my knees to my chest. My fingers pressed against my temples, trying to stop the pounding in my head. What kind of parents leave their daughter at an airport? What kind of parents call that a lesson? I wiped my face with the back of my hand, breathing in the heavy scent of exhaust and hot asphalt as planes roared overhead. I checked my phone again. No messages, no calls. Just that single text staring back at me like a slap across the face. Think of it as a lesson. My hands curled into fists as I looked around, trying to figure out what to do next, the weight of the day sinking into my bones. I wasn't ready to be alone. I wasn't ready for this. But they had made sure I didn't have a choice. A family of 4 walked past me, the little boy holding his dad's hand, giggling about the planes. I pulled my hood up, swallowing the tight knot in my throat as I tried to steady my breathing. I opened my phone again, scrolling through contacts, hovering over Aunt Melissa's number. Mom had told me not to call her, said she was weak for always stepping in to rescue me when I messed up. I hesitated, thumbs shaking, then tapped the call button. It rang once, twice, 3 times before her warm voice answered. "Maddie, sweetheart," I pressed my lips together to stop the sob that threatened to spill. "Aunt Melissa," I managed, voice barely above a whisper. "What's wrong? Are you okay? Where are you?" I took a shaky breath, looking around at the people walking by, the neon lights buzzing above me. They left me. At the airport, they just drove away. Silence, then a sharp intake of breath. "Oh, honey," she whispered. I closed my eyes, letting the tears slip down my cheeks. They told me to figure it out. That it was a lesson. She was quiet for a moment, then her voice turned firm. Listen to me, Maddie. Stay where you are. I'm coming to get you. I gripped the phone tighter. They said not to call you. They'll be mad. I don't care, she snapped, her voice trembling with anger. This is not okay. I'm getting in the car now. Stay inside near the doors. Don't go anywhere, you hear me? Yes, ma'am, I whispered. I'll be there in about 4 hours. Can you hold on until then? I nodded even though she couldn't see me. I can. Call me if anything happens. I'm coming, Maddie. I promise. The line went dead and I held the phone to my chest, taking deep breaths to stop the shaking in my hands. I wiped my face, grabbing the soda and water, and stood up. The hard plastic chairs felt like they were swallowing me whole, so I walked toward the entrance, finding a corner near the baggage claim where I could see the exit but stay out of the way. I sat there hugging my backpack to my chest, watching people reunite with hugs and laughter. The loudspeaker called out flight numbers, but it all sounded like static to me. A security guard walked by, giving me a curious glance. I looked away, hoping he wouldn't ask questions, hoping he wouldn't call anyone. I pulled my knees up, resting my chin on them, the cold tiles seeping through my jeans. My stomach growled, but I ignored it, focusing on the ticking clock on the wall across from me. Every minute felt like an hour. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through old photos. Me and Rebecca at the lake, me with a birthday cake at 10, Mom smiling next to me, Dad's hand on my shoulder. They looked like a family that loved each other. I wondered when that stopped being true. I jumped when my phone buzzed, the screen lighting up with a message from Mom. Don't think about calling anyone else. You need to figure this out on your own. I swallowed, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, wanting to scream, to ask her why. Why was this a lesson? Why did they think abandoning me would teach me anything except that I didn't matter? I didn't respond. I turned the phone off, shoving it deep into my backpack, forcing myself not to cry again. An elderly woman walked past, her kind eyes lingering on me for a moment before she moved on. I wondered if she could tell I was alone, if she could see the fear I was trying to hide. The hours dragged on, the terminal lights harsh against my tired eyes. I leaned against the wall, drifting in and out of a restless daze, the sounds of rolling suitcases and the intercom a constant reminder that I was stuck here waiting for someone who actually cared to come for me. I opened my eyes when I heard a baby crying nearby, watching as a young mother rocked her child, whispering soft words to calm him down. My chest ached as I turned away, pulling my hoodie tighter around me. The automatic doors opened with a hiss, letting in the humid Georgia air each time someone walked in or out. Every time the doors opened, I looked up, hoping it would be Aunt Melissa, even though I knew it was too soon. I pressed my forehead to my knees, closing my eyes, trying to block out everything around me. But I couldn't block out the truth. They weren't coming back for me. And for the first time, I realized maybe I didn't want them to. You never really know fear until you're trying to fall asleep on a cold airport bench with no one waiting for you to come home. I pulled my knees tighter to my chest, shifting on the hard plastic seat, trying to find a position that didn't make my bones ache. The terminal lights were too bright, buzzing above me, making it impossible to forget where I was. A group of teenagers walked past, dragging their carry-ons, laughing about something on someone's phone. I watched them go, wishing I could disappear into their world for just a moment, a world where parents waited at arrivals, ready with hugs and smiles. My stomach growled, sharp and empty. I pressed my palm over it, willing the ache to stop, but it didn't. I glanced at the vending machines across the hall, remembering the last crumpled dollar in my pocket, but I was too scared to leave my spot near the doors. What if Aunt Melissa came and couldn't find me? What if they came back and took me home, pretending like nothing happened? A man in a security uniform walked by, giving me another look before continuing his rounds. I shifted my gaze, pretending to scroll through my phone, though it was turned off, tucked deep in my bag. An older woman with soft gray hair walked toward me, her eyes kind as she paused. "You look hungry, sweetheart," she said softly. I glanced up, swallowing. "I'm okay," I lied. She held out a wrapped sandwich, her hands trembling just a little. "Take it. Please." I stared at it for a moment before taking it with both hands. "Thank you." She smiled, her eyes sad. "Do you need me to call someone, the police?" "No, ma'am," I whispered, shaking my head. "Please don't." She hesitated, looking like she wanted to say more, but then she just patted my shoulder. Take care of yourself, honey. Thank you, I said again, my voice cracking. I waited until she walked away before unwrapping the sandwich, the scent of turkey and bread hitting me so hard I nearly cried. I ate slowly, trying to make it last, chewing carefully, even as tears slipped down my face. I wiped them away with the back of my hand, scanning the crowd around me. Families hugging, couples arguing softly, a businessman shouting into his phone. All of them going somewhere, all of them having someone. Except me. I pulled out my phone again, turning it on, watching as it lit up with that single message from Mom. Don't call Aunt Melissa, you need to figure this out on your own. I read it 3 times, my thumb hovering over the keyboard, my heart pounding. My chest felt tight, like it was too small for the air I was trying to breathe. Then I dialed Aunt Melissa's number anyway. It rang, and with every second that passed, I felt like I was betraying them, like I was doing something wrong. But when she answered, her voice soft and warm, I knew I wasn't. Maddie, I tried to speak, but it came out as a choked sound, so I swallowed and tried again. Aunt Melissa, they left me here, they're not coming back. Her silence was sharp, and I could almost see her pressing a hand to her mouth. Where are you exactly, honey? At the Savannah airport. Near the baggage claim. I'm coming. Don't move. Don't go outside and don't talk to anyone else, okay? Yes, ma'am. I'll be there in 4 hours. You stay strong for me, Maddie. I nodded, though she couldn't see me, my fingers gripping the phone so hard they hurt. Okay, I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. I closed my eyes as the line went dead, pressing the phone against my forehead, letting myself breathe for the first time in hours. She was coming. Someone was coming for me. I tucked the phone back into my backpack, clutching it like a lifeline as I pulled my legs closer to my chest. The airport was quieter now, the late-night flights gone, leaving behind tired travelers and the hum of cleaning crews pushing their carts. I shifted on the bench, the plastic digging into my hip, but I didn't move. I was afraid that if I moved, I would lose the only piece of safety I had left. My eyes burned, but I didn't let the tears fall. I was tired of crying. A janitor swept past me, glancing at me with curious eyes before moving on. I turned away, gripping the straps of my backpack, willing myself to stay invisible. I pulled out the half-empty water bottle, taking small sips to calm the dryness in my throat. My stomach twisted, reminding me it was empty again, but I ignored it. I had already finished the sandwich the older woman gave me hours ago, eating it slowly, trying to make it last. Every few minutes, I checked the sliding doors, hoping to see Aunt Melissa's face, even though I knew it was too early. I tried to sleep, closing my eyes and letting my head rest against the cold wall behind me, but every noise made me flinch. The rolling of suitcase wheels, the distant cough of a stranger, the creak of the bench beneath me. My body was here, but my mind was stuck, replaying the moment I turned around with the drinks in my hands and saw the empty curb. They really left me. They really thought this was a lesson. My phone buzzed in my bag, and I jumped, grabbing it with shaking hands. A message from Mom. Don't think about calling Melissa. You need to figure this out. I stared at the words, my fingers trembling as I read them over and over. My vision blurred, and I blinked hard, refusing to cry again. I turned the screen off and shoved the phone back into my bag, pressing my fist against my mouth to stop the sob that tried to escape. I couldn't understand how they could be so cruel. Why did they think abandoning me would make me stronger? Why did they think I deserved this? A family walked by, a dad carrying his sleeping daughter in his arms while the mom held their son's hand. The little boy looked at me, his eyes wide, before turning back to his mother, asking something I couldn't hear. I looked away, swallowing the lump in my throat, hugging my knees tighter to my chest. The minutes crawled by, each one feeling like an hour as I waited. The airport lights never dimmed, and the cold from the floor seeped through my jeans, making me shiver. I closed my eyes, trying to imagine Aunt Melissa's arms around me, her warm voice telling me it would be okay. I tried to remember what it felt like to be safe. I drifted in and out, waking up every time someone walked too close, my body tense, ready to run if I had to. I didn't know where I would go if I ran, but the fear kept me alert. A man in a suit sat on the bench across from me, tapping away on his laptop, ignoring the world. I wondered if he noticed me, a girl curled up like a stray animal waiting for someone to come. Another hour passed, and I checked my phone again. No new messages, no missed calls. Just the silent promise that Aunt Melissa was coming. I hugged my backpack, pressing my cheek against the rough fabric, letting my eyes close for just a moment. The loudspeaker crackled, announcing a delayed flight, and I jerked awake, my heart racing. I wiped my face with my sleeve, pushing down the fear, reminding myself that I wasn't alone anymore. She was coming. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that nothing would ever be the same again. There are decisions you make as a kid that end up changing your entire life. I saw Aunt Melissa before she saw me. Her car pulled up to the curb, headlights cutting through the early morning fog rolling over the parking lot. She stepped out, her hair pulled back, eyes scanning the doors until they landed on me. I stood clutching my backpack so tightly my fingers ached. "Maddie," she breathed out, rushing toward me. The moment her arms wrapped around me, I let the tears fall. She held me close, her hand rubbing small circles on my back as I shook in her arms. "It's okay, baby. You're okay now," she whispered, her own voice cracking. I pulled back, wiping my face with my sleeve, embarrassed by how small I felt. She tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, giving me a gentle smile. "Let's get you home." I climbed into the passenger seat, sinking into the warmth of her car. The heater hummed and the soft scent of peppermint and coffee filled the space. I held onto my backpack, staring out the window as she pulled away from the curb. Neither of us spoke for a while. The highway was empty, the sky shifting from black to deep gray as the sun tried to rise. She finally cleared her throat. "Do you want to talk about it?" I shook my head, my eyes stinging again. "They said it was a lesson." Her hands tightened on the steering wheel, her knuckles white. "That's not a lesson, Maddie. That's abuse." I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. We drove through the morning, stopping only once for gas and coffee. She bought me a muffin, pushing it into my hands when I tried to refuse. "You need to eat, sweetheart." I took small bites, the taste of blueberries and sugar almost too much after the emptiness of yesterday. She glanced at me every few minutes, her eyes filled with a sadness I didn't understand. When we pulled into her driveway in Atlanta, the sun was up, birds chirping like nothing in the world had gone wrong. I followed her inside, clutching my bag, looking around at the cozy living room with its warm blankets and soft rugs. "Bathroom is down the hall," she said softly. "I'll make you some tea." I closed the bathroom door behind me, leaning against it as I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. My reflection in the mirror looked like a ghost, pale skin, red eyes, hair tangled. I splashed water on my face, trying to wash away the fear, but it clung to me like a second skin. When I came out, Aunt Melissa was waiting with a steaming mug, her eyes gentle. "Sit," she said, patting the couch. I sat, the warm cup between my hands grounding me as I stared into the dark tea. Her phone rang and I saw her face tighten when she checked the screen. She turned away, answering it. "Diana," she said quietly. I couldn't hear my mother's words, but I could hear the anger in her voice even through the small speaker. "No, she's not coming back right now, Aunt Melissa," said her voice firm. I heard my mother's voice rise harsh and sharp, and I saw Aunt Melissa's eyes well with tears. "She's a child, Diana," she whispered, her hand shaking. I wanted to take the phone to scream at my mother, to ask her why she hated me so much. But I couldn't move. Aunt Melissa wiped her face, her voice shaking now. "Don't you threaten me. Don't you dare." She ended the call, her shoulders slumping as she set the phone down. She looked at me, forcing a small smile. "It's okay, Maddie. I won't let them hurt you again." I wanted to believe her, but I saw the fear in her eyes. I saw the way her hands trembled as she reached for me. And I realized that staying here would only bring her pain too. I found Aunt Melissa in the kitchen, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. She turned when she saw me, forcing a smile that didn't reach her tired eyes. "You hungry, sweetheart? I can make you some eggs." I shook my head, clutching the sleeves of my sweater. "I'm okay." She moved around the kitchen anyway, pulling out a pan, cracking eggs, moving like she needed to keep busy so she wouldn't break. The scent of butter filled the small kitchen, warm and comforting, but it didn't reach the cold space inside me. Her phone buzzed again on the counter, lighting up with Mom's name. Aunt Melissa flinched, letting out a shaky breath. She silenced it, setting the phone down like it burned her. "She won't stop, will she?" I whispered. Aunt Melissa turned to me, tears filling her eyes again. "She's your mother, Maddie. She thinks she's doing the right thing." "She left me," I said, my voice flat. She thinks that's love. Aunt Melissa didn't answer, just flipped the eggs onto a plate, sliding it in front of me. Eat. I sat pushing the eggs around with my fork, my stomach twisting. I tried to take a bite, but it stuck in my throat. Diana says if I don't send you back, she'll call the police. Aunt Melissa said softly. I looked up, meeting her eyes. Will she really do that? Aunt Melissa sank into the chair across from me, her shoulders slumping. She might. I felt the fear creeping in, but I pushed it down, gripping the edge of the table. I don't want to go back. I know, baby. Her voice cracked and she reached across, taking my hand in hers. And I don't want you to either. Silence filled the kitchen, the ticking of the clock on the wall loud in the small space. Aunt Melissa's hand was warm, but I could feel it trembling. I thought about her soft blankets, her warm smile, the way she made me feel safe. But I also saw the fear in her eyes, the way her hands shook every time the phone buzzed with Mom's name. If I stayed, Mom would keep coming for me. And for Aunt Melissa, I took a deep breath, forcing the words out. I don't want you to get in trouble because of me. She shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. You're not trouble, Maddie. But if I stay, she'll hurt you, I whispered. She'll make you suffer because of me. Aunt Melissa let out a broken sob, covering her mouth with her hand. I stood, moving around the table to wrap my arms around her, burying my face in her shoulder. She held me tight, her tears soaking into my hair. I love you, she whispered. You're the daughter I never had. I love you too, I said, my voice shaking. We stayed like that for a long time, holding on to each other like we were both afraid to let go. When we finally pulled back, she wiped her face, taking a deep breath. What do you want to do, Maddie? I looked at her, feeling the fear, the pain, the exhaustion, but underneath it all, there was something else. Resolve. I want to take care of myself, I said. I want to work, finish school, find a way to live without them. Aunt Melissa stared at me for a moment, then nodded slowly. Okay. She stood, moving to the small closet near the door, pulling out an old green suitcase, scuffed and worn. She set it on the table, opening it with a soft sigh. She pulled out her wallet, counting out $300, folding the bills into my hand. It's not much, but it's a start. I felt the weight of the money, the promise it held, the freedom it offered. She placed a hand on my cheek, her thumb brushing away a tear I didn't know had fallen. You will never have to be afraid of them again. I closed my eyes, letting the warmth of her hand ground me, memorizing the feel of it. Because I knew this was goodbye. When you have nothing left to lose, you finally learn what it means to live. I stepped off the bus in Atlanta with the green suitcase in one hand and $300 tucked inside my pocket. The city felt too big, too loud, but I kept walking, refusing to let the fear swallow me. I found a cheap room in a rundown house with a girl named Kayla who worked the late shift at a diner. She was older, 21, with tired eyes and a quick smile, and she didn't ask questions when I handed over half my cash for a mattress on the floor. You work? She asked, lighting a cigarette near the window. I will, I said. She blew out smoke, nodding. Good, you're gonna need to. The next morning I walked into a small coffee shop down the block asking for a job. The owner, a grumpy man named Hank, looked me up and down before handing me an apron. Start now, he said. I washed dishes, wiped tables, and learned how to pull espresso shots that left my hands shaking from the smell of coffee and nerves. The tips were small, but they kept me fed, let me pay Kayla for the floor I slept on, and let me keep the lights on when she couldn't. At night, I studied for my GED, sitting on the cold floor with a borrowed lamp, scribbling notes into a second-hand notebook. I fell asleep to the sound of sirens outside the cracked window, holding on to the dream of something better. Sometimes I would see groups of high school kids come into the shop talking about prom or graduation, laughing about their parents, about college visits. I would force a smile while I handed them their change, but every time it hurt. One night I came home shaking, fever burning under my skin. Kayla found me curled up, teeth chattering, the world spinning. You need a doctor, she said, her voice firm. I can't afford it, I whispered. She sighed, covering me with another blanket, sitting beside me as I drifted in and out of sleep, mumbling about coffee orders and GED tests. Days turned into months, and I passed my GED, the paper in my hand feeling like a promise. I took the bus to a small community college, standing in line with kids my age, signing papers with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. I worked 3 jobs at the coffee shop, cleaning offices at night and babysitting on weekends. I ate cheap meals, counted every dollar, and told myself it was worth it. Because it was. I finished community college and packed my bags again, this time heading to Austin, Texas. I found a room with 3 other girls sleeping on a mattress in the corner while I worked at a real estate office as a receptionist. I listened as agents made deals, learned how to read contracts, and took notes when they thought I wasn't looking. I stayed late organizing files, studying property law in the break room while eating instant noodles. One night my manager, Mr. Thompson, found me reading a thick real estate guide under the fluorescent lights. "You thinking of getting your license?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. I looked up startled, then nodded. "Someday." He smiled, shaking his head. "You're a fighter, kid." I didn't answer, but I held on to those words. At 25, I had saved enough to take a risk, using everything I had to start Silverline Developments. My first project nearly ruined me when a contractor backed out, leaving me with bills I couldn't pay and calls I couldn't answer. I spent nights sitting in the tiny office I rented, staring at spreadsheets, trying to figure out how to fix it. I called everyone I knew, begged for second chances, worked every angle I could, and somehow I made it through. But the fight never really stopped. After that first deal, I learned how quickly people could change when they realized a young woman with nothing could actually build something worth noticing. Some tried to undercut me, others tried to charm me into partnerships that would leave me with nothing. I learned to spot fake smiles and empty promises, to read every word of a contract twice before signing, to trust my gut even when my hands were shaking. Most days I was too busy to think about how lonely it was. I would walk job sites with mud on my boots, checking progress, arguing with subcontractors who tried to cut corners, taking photos for clients who expected me to be perfect. "Miss Carter, you need to calm down," one older foreman said when I caught him using cheap wiring on a new build. I stared at him, voice low and steady. "Fix it or I'll find someone who will." He fixed it. I kept moving, one project after another, each one a brick in the foundation of the life I was building. I lived cheap, saving every dollar, using the same cracked phone for years, wearing the same blazer to every meeting until the seams started to fray. I didn't care about looking successful, I cared about being free. Freedom, I learned, wasn't about money. It was about not having to answer to people who thought they owned you. It was about waking up every day and knowing you didn't owe them anything. But there were nights late when I sat alone in that office, the city quiet outside, when the memories crept in. The cold bench at the airport. The way Mom's voice sounded when she told me it was a lesson. The way Dad never even looked back. I would close my eyes, gripping the edge of my desk, telling myself I would never let them take anything from me again. I was 27 when Silverline finally turned a real profit, enough that I could move into a small but clean apartment in a quiet part of Austin. I bought a new mattress, real dishes, and a second-hand couch that didn't smell like mildew. The first night in that apartment, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the fridge, the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. It was the first place I had ever lived that felt like it was mine. I thought about calling Aunt Melissa, telling her that I had made it, that I was okay. But I didn't. I just closed my eyes, letting the quiet fill the room. The next morning, I was back at the site before sunrise, hard hat on, clipboard in hand, boots crunching over gravel, as I walked the property with investors who still sometimes raised their eyebrows when they saw me. I didn't care. "Miss Carter, you think you can handle this scale of development?" one of them asked, arms crossed, looking over the lot with doubt in his eyes. I held his gaze, letting the morning breeze lift my hair as I stood my ground. "I know I can." And I did. I hired a small team, people who worked hard and didn't care that their boss was younger than them. We shared coffee in the mornings before meetings, laughing when we could, working late when we had to. We signed deals, broke ground, and watched buildings rise where there had been empty lots before. It wasn't easy. It was never easy. There were months when a deal fell through and I had to scramble to keep the lights on, when a contractor disappeared with an advance payment, when weather delays threatened to bankrupt a project. Each time I found a way. Each time I reminded myself why I started. I thought they would never find me, that I had finally escaped them, that the past was something I had left on that airport bench years ago. I thought I had outrun it for good. But I was wrong. Ghosts from your past always find a way back, especially when you think you're finally safe. I was 36 running Silverline developments from a corner office overlooking the Austin skyline, a view I had fought to earn. Papers were stacked neatly, my team buzzing around as we prepared for the biggest deal of my career. Mr. Lewis, a sharp investor with deep pockets and a reputation for pulling out if he smelled chaos, was set to sign with us in 2 days. I barely slept reviewing permits, final numbers, checking every detail twice. That morning, I was sipping cold coffee, eyes on the sunrise breaking over the city, when my phone buzzed with a voicemail. "Madeline, it's your mother. We need to talk." Her voice was older, weaker, but that cold edge was still there, hidden beneath the softness she tried to fake. I stared at the phone, my hand tightening around the cup. I didn't call back. An hour later, a message popped up from Rebecca. "Mom and Dad are sick. They need your help. Please." I turned the phone over face down on the desk, pressing my palms against my eyes to stop the memories from clawing their way back. I tried to drown myself in work, reviewing the contracts with Mr. Lewis, planning the rollout, handling a supplier issue. But the messages kept coming, each one like a knock on a door I never wanted to open again. "Please, Maddie, it's bad. They're going to lose the house. Dad can't work anymore. They need you." I didn't respond. Later that night, I was walking through the office, turning off lights, checking the locks, when my assistant Jenny ran up, phone in hand, eyes wide. "You need to see this," she said. She handed me the phone, a TikTok video already playing. It was Mr. Kim, a local attorney turned TikTok justice warrior, standing outside a small rundown house. He held the mic up to my mother, who was sitting on a folding chair wrapped in a thin blanket, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "My daughter left us," she said, voice shaking just enough. "We're sick, we're losing everything, and she doesn't care." My father sat beside her, head in his hands, shaking, his gray hair sticking out from under a faded baseball cap. "She promised she'd never abandon us," he mumbled loud enough for the mic to catch. "Mr. Kim turned to the camera, eyes burning with that fake righteousness. "Is this what family means in America now? Parents left to suffer while their children live in luxury." I felt the blood drain from my face. The video had over 1 million views. The comments were brutal. How could she abandon them? She doesn't deserve her success. Money changes people. Jenny shifted beside me, uncomfortable. Mr. Lewis's team saw it. They're asking questions. I closed my eyes, breathing in slowly, the weight of everything pressing down on me. They had found me. And they were using the same tools I had spent years learning to master: public perception, leverage, fear. I opened my eyes, looking out over the empty office, the city lights flickering below. They didn't come back because they missed me. They came back because they needed something. And I realized, as the hum of the city filled the silence around me, that they were willing to destroy everything I built to get it. I stood there in the dark, the hum of the city pressing against the glass, my reflection staring back at me. They didn't care who I had become or what it had cost me to get here. They only saw what I could give them, what they could take, how they could twist the story to fit the narrative they needed. I turned away from the window, rolling my shoulders to ease the tension that had settled there. My phone buzzed again on the desk, lighting up with another notification, another stranger's comment, another demand for me to explain myself to people who didn't know me. I ignored it. Instead, I opened my laptop, pulling up the contracts for the Lewis deal, scrolling through the clauses, reviewing every promise I had made, every deadline I had agreed to meet. My eyes burned from exhaustion, but I kept reading, searching for cracks they could use to pull the deal away. The door opened quietly, and Jenny stepped in, holding 2 coffees, her face pale under the fluorescent lights. "You didn't go home," she said, setting 1 cup beside me. "Neither did you," I replied. She gave a tired smile, sinking into the chair across from me. "It's all over the internet, Maddie. I know." She hesitated, then whispered, "Do you think they're really sick? That they're telling the truth?" I let out a breath, leaning back in my chair. "Probably. But it doesn't change what they did." She nodded, fiddling with the sleeve of her cup. "You're going to fight this, aren't you?" I met her eyes. "I'm not letting them take this from me." The room was quiet for a moment, the hum of the building settling around us. Jenny finally stood, patting the desk softly before slipping out, leaving me alone with the contracts and the weight of the past pressing down. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the last message from Rebecca. They need you, Maddie. They're going to lose everything. I typed a reply, then deleted it, my thumb hovering over the screen before I finally set the phone face down. They weren't reaching out because they loved me. They were reaching out because they saw me as a solution to their failures, to their debts, to their regrets, and they didn't care what it would cost me. I took a sip of coffee, the bitterness grounding me as I reopened the spreadsheet of our upcoming projects. Numbers steadied me in a way people never could. Numbers didn't lie, didn't manipulate, didn't abandon you when you were 16. I was reviewing site bids when Jenny returned, her face tight. Mr. Lewis's team wants to move the meeting to this afternoon, she said carefully. I closed my laptop, wiping a hand across my face. Okay. Do you want me there? No, I said, but thank you. She left again, and I stood moving to the window, looking down at the street where people moved with coffee cups and briefcases, unaware of the war I was about to step into. They thought they could corner me, drag me back into the past, shame me into compliance. But they had underestimated what it meant to survive the way I did, to learn how to build something with your bare hands when no one thought you would make it. If they wanted to fight, I wasn't going to run. The worst pain doesn't come from enemies. It comes from the ones who once held your hand. I called an emergency meeting that morning, my team gathering around the glass conference table, eyes tired, faces pale under the harsh lights. Crisis protocol, I said, my voice calm. This is not going away quietly. David, my lawyer, joined on video. Ty loosened his eyes sharp behind his glasses. They're pushing a narrative online, Madeline. TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, your parents' story is everywhere. I know, I said, flipping through the reports Jenny had printed. And Mr. Lewis wants answers. David nodded. We can file cease and desist letters, but you need to prepare for court if this escalates. I took a slow breath, fingers tapping the table. Prepare everything. While David talked strategy, I scanned the social media posts, the edited clips Mr. Kim was pushing out daily. My mother wrapped in that thin blanket crying about her ungrateful daughter. My father mumbling about how I owed them. Thousands of strangers flooding the comments demanding I do the right thing. I felt the rage cold and steady settle in my chest. They thought they could shame me back into submission. I was checking email when Mr. Planav, Ara, Lewis's assistant, called. He wants to meet tomorrow, Madeline. Privately. Understood. I ended the call, closing my eyes for a moment to steady myself. That's when Jenny knocked, stepping in, worry written all over her face. We need to talk, she said. I motioned for her to sit, bracing myself. She sat, twisting her hands together. I think we have a leak. I opened my eyes fully, the words cutting through the fog of exhaustion. Who? She swallowed hard. Ava. Ava. My assistant. The one who stayed late with me, who I trusted with my schedule, my notes, my life. She's been meeting with someone, Jenny whispered. We traced it back. It's Mr. Kim. And your family. The room felt too small, the air too thin. She sold me out. Jenny nodded, her eyes sad. She gave them documents, internal schedules, financial projections. I closed my eyes, remembering how Ava used to bring me coffee in the mornings, how she'd sit across from me with her eager smile, asking for advice on her career. She said your mother promised her help, Jenny continued softly. Connections, money, a chance at something bigger. I let out a slow, controlled breath, pushing the emotion down where it couldn't reach me. Set up a meeting with HR, I said. And get security ready. Jenny nodded, leaving the room quietly. I stood, moving to the window, the city sprawling below, alive and indifferent. That night, I drove home late, the lights of Austin blurring as I replayed the day in my mind. Betrayal cut deeper when it came from the people you trusted. At home, I poured a glass of water, staring at my reflection in the kitchen window. My phone buzzed on the counter, lighting up with Ethan's name. I hesitated before answering. Madeline, his familiar voice said, calm, smooth, the same tone he used when he convinced me to trust him years ago. What do you want? I asked, keeping my voice flat. I tried to help, he said. Rebecca reached out. They're desperate. You gave them information, didn't you? I asked, gripping the counter until my knuckles turned white. Silence. I thought it would help you see they need you, he said quietly. My eyes closed, the betrayal sharper than I expected. Get out of my life, Ethan. I ended the call, letting the phone drop onto the counter, the screen going dark. I stood there, letting the silence of the apartment wrap around me. Silverline was shaking. My team was scared. They were trying to take everything from me. I opened my eyes, my reflection looking back with a steadiness I almost didn't recognize. It was time to fight back. I turned from the window, grabbed my coat, and drove to the office before the sun broke the horizon. The parking lot was empty, the sky still bruised with night, but I needed the silence before the storm. Inside, I flipped on the lights, the hum filling the space as I pulled out files, contracts, and statements, spreading them across the conference table in a precise order. Jenny arrived, her hair tied back, a coffee in her hand for me. "Long day ahead," she said softly, setting the cup beside me. "It's going to get louder before it gets quiet," I replied. David called in at 7 a.m. sharp, his voice calm, the sound of papers shuffling in the background. "I've prepared cease and desist letters for Mr. Kim's channels. We'll serve them today," he said. "Good," I answered, flipping through screenshots of the doctored videos, each one twisting my words and my image to make me the villain. "And the Lewis meeting?" David asked. "It's happening," I said. "I'm not letting them kill this deal." Jenny handed me the printed social media reports, the hate comments, the threats, the accusations. I scanned them, my jaw tightening, letting the anger ground me, not drown me. "They think they're going to shame me into submission," I said, looking at Jenny. She nodded. "They don't know you." Before noon, I called a full team meeting, standing at the head of the table with every department lead watching me. "You've all seen what's happening," I began, my voice steady. "They are trying to dismantle what we've built with lies, manipulation, and guilt. They are using family and pity to justify destroying a business that feeds your families, your futures." No one moved. No one spoke. "I will not let them," I continued. "But I can't fight this alone. If you need to walk away, I will understand. If you stay, you are with me all the way." Silence filled the room before one of the senior project managers cleared his throat. "You built this company from nothing, Madeline. We're not going anywhere." A murmur of agreement spread around the table. Relief mixed with fire in my chest. After the meeting, HR called me to the side. Ava was waiting, her face pale, hands shaking. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears gathering in her eyes. "They promised me they'd pay off my debts, that they'd help my family if I gave them your schedules and contracts." I stared at her, the betrayal sinking deeper with every word she spoke. She was someone I had mentored, trusted, someone who had shared coffee with me on late nights, telling me about her dreams. "You sold me out," I said quietly. She sobbed, nodding. "I know. I was desperate." "Desperation isn't an excuse," I replied. Security escorted her out, her sobs echoing down the hall as the door clicked shut. I returned to my office, sinking into my chair, the weight of betrayal heavy but not enough to break me. I scrolled through my messages, stopping on one from Ethan, his name still familiar, still bitter on my tongue. "Can we talk? I just want to help." Help. That word again. I called him, listening to the line ring until he answered, his voice warm, familiar. "Madeline, I just wanted to." "You went to Rebecca." I interrupted, my tone sharp. "You gave them what they wanted." He sighed, a fake softness in his breath. "They need you, Maddie. You're the only one who can fix this." I laughed, the sound dry, empty. "You don't get to use that name. They're your family," he tried again. "No, Ethan. They're not," I said, ending the call. I placed the phone down gently, looking out at the city, the lights beginning to glow as dusk settled. They thought betrayal would make me weak, that guilt would force me back into the cage they left me in as a child. They were wrong. If they wanted war, they would get it. I slept in the office that night, curled on the small couch by the window, the city lights blinking through the blinds. At dawn, I changed into a clean blouse, tied my hair back, and walked to the conference room, carrying the court documents they had sent. Jenny and David were already waiting, coffee cups in hand, eyes sharp but tired. "They think they can win this with pity and noise," I said, placing the papers on the table. David nodded, flipping through them again. "We'll file a response, but the real fight is outside the courtroom." Jenny hesitated, then whispered. "They're using TikTok and YouTube again. Mr. Kim is pushing interviews. It's gaining traction." I felt the anger settle low in my stomach, steady and cold. "Then we fight them where they started it." I spent the morning digging through my old boxes, pulling out everything I had saved. The message from my mother telling me to figure it out on your own. The bus ticket Aunt Melissa bought for me. The faded photos from that year I spent working in the diner, the look in my eyes when I had nothing and no one. Proof they had abandoned me long before I abandoned them. At noon, I texted Melissa, "Can you talk?" She called immediately, her warm voice breaking the tension in my chest. "Baby, I've been waiting for you to call." "They're suing me," I said simply. A soft sigh. "Of course they are." "Will you stand with me?" I asked. "You don't even have to ask," she replied. That afternoon, I set up the camera in my office, pulling the blinds open so the sunlight filled the room, making the gold lettering of Silverline on the wall behind me glow. Jenny stood off to the side, hand over her mouth, watching as I sat studying my breath. I hit record. "My name is Madeline Carter." I began looking directly into the lens. "And this is the truth." I told them everything. About the day at the airport, the heat rising from the concrete, the soda in my hand as I watched the car disappear. About the nights I spent alone, the jobs, the GED classes, the fear of not making it. About the years of silence, until the day they decided they needed me, and how they tried to spin the story to the world. I held up the printed messages, the photos, the affidavits Melissa had sent. "They didn't want me when I was a scared teenager with nothing," I said, my voice calm, clear. "They want me now because they see what I've built." I paused, letting the silence stretch, letting the truth sink in. They left me. I survived. And I will not apologize for surviving. I ended the recording, the camera light blinking off, the silence in the room heavy but clean. Jenny let out a shaky breath. "It's going to go viral." "Let it," I replied. That night, I posted the video. Within hours, the narrative shifted. Comments flooded in, thousands of strangers offering support, others sharing their own stories of family betrayal, of choosing survival over blood. The next morning, David called, his voice lighter than it had been in weeks. "Lewis watched your video," he said. "He's staying with us." I closed my eyes, relief washing over me, the weight on my chest easing for the first time. Silverline was safe for now, and so was I. I opened my eyes and let out a breath I felt I'd been holding for years. I spent that afternoon walking the halls of Silverline, checking in on teams, seeing the small smiles they tried to hide when they saw me. The tension that had haunted the office for weeks was finally lifting, replaced by quiet focus. Jenny stopped me outside the conference room, holding a stack of files. "You did it," she said softly. "No," I replied, meeting her eyes. "We did." She nodded, pressing the files into my hands. "These are the new contracts coming in. People trust us again." Trust. A word I never thought I would reclaim. That night, I returned to the small apartment I had never bothered to leave, dropping my keys on the counter, letting the silence greet me like an old friend. I poured water into a glass, standing by the window, watching Austin glow under the streetlights. My phone buzzed on the counter, vibrating across the surface until it almost fell. I grabbed it without thinking. Rebecca. The name cut deeper than I wanted to admit. I pressed answer, holding the phone to my ear, saying nothing. "Maddie." Her voice was small, broken, swallowed by tears. "It's bad. They've lost everything." I closed my eyes, pressing a hand against the glass, the city cool against my palm. "They're living in a motel now," she choked out, words tumbling over each other. "Mom's sick, Dad can't get out of bed. They're blaming me now, Maddie. They say it's my fault you turned on them." Silence filled the space between us, thick, alive, heavy with years we could never get back. "I tried to protect them," Rebecca whispered. "I thought if I just kept the peace, if I kept you two apart, it would be okay." "You knew," I said, softly opening my eyes, watching the cars move below. "You knew what they did." She sobbed, breathless. I was a coward. A part of me wanted to scream, to let out every shard of betrayal she had helped build inside me. Another part wanted to close my eyes and forget, to let her pain dissolve into the darkness. "They're your parents, Maddie," she whispered. "They have nothing now." I felt the ache in my chest, the old instinct to fix what they broke, to carry what they refused to hold. "I know," I said, my voice steady, clear, final. She was quiet, her breath catching. "What are you going to do?" I looked at my reflection in the window, seeing the woman I had fought to become, the scars, the strength, the survival. They made their choices, Rebecca, I said, my voice low. Now they live with them. She broke then, the sound of her crying, flooding the line, begging me, pleading with words I had waited years to hear but no longer needed. I'm sorry, Maddie, she wept. I'm so sorry. I closed my eyes, letting the words pass through me, letting them fall into the silence of the apartment. I know, I whispered before ending the call, letting the screen go dark in my hand. Outside, the city kept moving, lights shifting, people laughing somewhere far below. I stood there, glass in hand, breathing alive, free. They had lost everything. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty for letting them. I set the glass down on the counter, the soft click echoing in the quiet of my apartment. The city lights pulsed beyond the windows, casting soft patterns on the floor as I moved through the living room, letting my hand brush across the back of the couch, the shelf lined with small plants I remembered to water now. I grabbed my keys, the metal cool against my palm, and slipped on a light jacket, stepping into the hallway. The elevator hummed as it carried me down, opening to the lobby where the night guard lifted a hand in greeting. I nodded, pushing through the glass doors into the warm Austin air. The street smelled of rain on concrete, though the sky above was clear, stars peeking out between the buildings, the moon hanging low and bright. I walked for blocks past the taco stand on the corner where two cooks laughed as they closed up for the night, past a couple sitting on the hood of their car sharing fries and soft words. The world felt alive, a quiet reminder that life kept going, that it didn't care who you used to be. I found myself standing across the street from a small house I didn't recognize, but something about the peeling paint and the way the porch light flickered reminded me of the house I left behind. The one that was now for sale, grass growing. High windows, dark. For a moment, I closed my eyes, letting the memory come. 16, standing in the Savannah airport, clutching a soda. I didn't want the heat of the pavement rising into my shoes as I waited for them to come back. They never did. And I never went back. I opened my eyes, breathing in the warm air, and turned away from the house, walking back toward the heart of the city. When I reached the small park near my building, I paused, sitting on a bench, letting the wind tug at the edges of my hair as I looked up at the sky. The branches of the oak trees swayed softly, leaves whispering in the dark. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the contacts until I found her name. Melissa. I hovered for a moment, then typed, "You free for dinner tomorrow?" I hit send, slipping the phone into my jacket pocket as I leaned back, letting the cool metal of the bench ground me. Moments later, the phone buzzed. "Always, been waiting for you to ask." A small, real smile touched my lips as I stood walking the last few blocks home, the lights of the city washing over me, reminding me I was still here, still moving, still alive. Back in my apartment, I kicked off my shoes, walking barefoot across the cool floor, letting the silence wrap around me like a soft blanket. I poured a glass of water, taking a slow sip as I stepped onto the balcony. The city stretched out before me, lights blinking, traffic humming softly in the distance, people living, laughing, existing. I leaned against the railing, letting the breeze kiss my skin, the sounds of Austin reminding me that this was my life now. Not theirs, mine. I closed my eyes, breathing in, letting the air fill my lungs, letting the peace I fought so hard for settle deep into my bones. They had lost everything. And I had found everything I needed. Myself. The next morning, I woke before dawn, the city still quiet, as I pulled on jeans and a soft black sweater, tying my hair back loosely. I grabbed my keys, stepped into the hallway, and locked the door behind me. The drive out of Austin was peaceful, the highway nearly empty, as the first hints of sunrise broke along the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of soft pink and orange. I turned onto their old street without thinking, the houses lined up quietly, some lights on, some still dark, the world waking up. Their house stood there, smaller than I remembered. Paint chipped the porch, cracked the grass, tall and wild, swaying in the breeze like it had given up waiting for care. A for sale sign leaned crooked near the curb, the white letters fading under layers of dirt and rain. I parked across the street, resting my hands on the steering wheel, letting my eyes take it all in. This was the house where I learned to be silent, to move carefully, to carry the weight of expectations that were never truly mine. This was the house where I packed a bag, quietly swearing I would never look back. I stepped out, the gravel crunching under my shoes, the morning air cool against my face. I walked to the edge of the yard, close enough to see the peeling numbers on the door, the old curtains still hanging, faded and limp. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel sadness. I felt nothing but a lightness, a quiet acknowledgement that I had survived it. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to their numbers, the ones I had never fully blocked, the ones I had kept open like an old wound. I selected them all, pressing block, watching as the notifications disappeared, the silence settling like fresh air. Done. I turned, walking back to my car, sliding in the engine, humming softly as I drove away, watching the house disappear in the rearview mirror. On the drive back, I rolled the windows down, letting the breeze rush through, the warmth of the sun touching my skin, reminding me I was here, that I was free. Back in Austin, I showered, changed into a soft dress, and pulled a bottle of wine from the cabinet. I typed quickly, sending Melissa a message. "Dinner tonight." Almost instantly, she replied, "I've been waiting for this, baby." I smiled, setting the phone down, pouring a glass of wine, taking a sip as I stepped onto the balcony. The city lights blinked below, the hum of life drifting up, people laughing, cars passing, music floating from an open window somewhere down the block. I leaned on the railing, letting the glass rest against my lips, tasting the sweetness as the breeze moved through my hair. I thought about the girl I used to be, waiting at that airport, begging silently for them to come back. And I thought about the woman I had become, standing here, steady, unafraid. They had lost everything. And I had found freedom. What would you have done if you were me?